Happy Friday, beautiful people, and hello to you all out there tuning in for your first sip of the weekend. You tune into your happy hour Friday feels. We're celebrating all you working professionals out there doing your crazy craft, embracing the beauty of being human and connecting authentically. We're your host, Saj and Nicole, and we're living and working around the world, holding space for you and keeping it raw and real as we share fresh content with you every week. So follow us on LinkedIn at Friday Feels and Instagram at These Friday Feels for updates throughout the week.
In our last episode, we chatted to working professional Lauren Muir, who shared with us her not-so-traditional journey from starting as an entrepreneur at the age of 14 to now being in her first corporate gig 10 years later, and what she has kept close to her heart in moving through difficult times in her career.
And this week we have a very inspiring multipreneur joining us. We welcome Matt Davison, who is based in Cape Town, but a global thinker, travel enthusiast, and has made his living in just that. As the founder of Travel Tractions and now Cape Co-Living in this very cool space of Hustle House. We know it hasn't always been an easy journey, Matt, but we are so excited to hear more about it. So a big welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
So happy to be here. So looking forward to this.
So this theme of the month is enduring through exhaustion. And when we had a call earlier, you told us a little bit about how much you have endured through exhaustion in your journey. And so maybe just tell us a little bit about the journey, where it all started, and what this topic means to you and why it's important.
Yeah, I love this topic. I generally loved your topics, but I thought this one really resonated with me and my team and kind of what we've gone through up and down in the last couple of years. But the journey's been quite a long one. I think it started about 12 years ago, really, when I went off to Thailand after I'd finished my degree and I was a teacher there, and I discovered that you could kind of work online. And it wasn't too foreign back then, but it was pretty foreign, especially for South Africans, of this working online. And I gradually would tell people what I was doing in South Africa, what I was studying, and that was just updating websites, small menial kind of stuff for a travel business, which I was really passionate for. I loved that kind of job, finding nice pictures about a place and putting it on a website, and I made money from it, and that was really cool. But when I went to Thailand and I helped people with their businesses there, I gradually stopped teaching, because teaching is a very fulfilling job, but an exhausting job. You know, I understand why these teachers need 2 weeks or 1 month or 2 months holidays, because it's just one of those ones where you need to take a break. But I think that's kind of where the journey started for me over 10 years ago, was working online and figuring out that you could make money online. This was all so foreign to me because the buying in South Africa online was tiny. I think back then it was like 2% of people were purchasing online, which is like nothing. And I met other entrepreneurs. I met people kind of finding themselves in Thailand, people starting businesses, and it just opened up a million and one kind of ways that I never really thought of business. So with that, I realized that I needed to get more experience in the marketing and working online. And a lot of people had told me to go work in agencies to learn how they do it and kind of replicate that or not replicate that, depending if it was a good agency or not, I guess. So I did that for a year, and it was great learning experience, but I hungered for that travel and that being an entrepreneur and building my own things instead of other people's businesses. And I got a bit tired of being a night owl and sacrificing my nights for my work on my own businesses and in the day working in the agency. So eventually I quit, packed up my bags and went back to Thailand, because it's just such a fantastic destination for work-life balance, for food, for culture, for dropping anywhere in Asia. And I think, I think that's where it really ignited me. But I was always looking for a new place to live, or a place to live that wasn't South Africa. For some reason, I was very, I would say, anti-South Africa almost back then, which is a bit sad. But as I traveled more, I became more, I missed South Africa more. I missed our beaches, I missed our food, I missed our prices. So I discovered that I wanted to come back, but it happened very strangely. It happened on a Facebook group. One guy was looking for a marketer to market this startup in South Africa called Vibe Scout, which is about finding things to do anywhere in the city you were. And it resonated massively with me because I was traveling the whole time and trying to find things to do while going into these new cities. And I was like, cool, I get to solve a problem that I want to solve back in South Africa. I get to build a team. And that kind of was my next big step back into entrepreneurship. And I invested in that business, flew back to South Africa, built that team, had an exit, and then started Travel Tractions. And the entrepreneurship bug bit really badly, and I used a lot of that money to start multiple businesses. One of my heroes is a guy called Peter Levels. He's quite a famous guy. He did a project of a startup a month for 12 months, and he made Nomad List and a couple of other really successful startups. And when I built my thing, I kind of launched a startup every month until 2 years later, I had too many businesses and I needed to kind of focus. So yeah, that was about 4 or 5 years ago, and here I am with another business in a completely different model and thoroughly enjoying it.
That's quite the journey.
It has been. I mean, 10 years goes by pretty quickly, but summarized into 2 minutes, that's it.
Life moves fast when you're having fun, huh?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, I connected with you when I was back in Cape Town in February because I couldn't stay in my home because my home was being home exchanged out, which is the way I've been living in the world. And so I was looking for a place to stay. And I came across Hustle House and Cape Co-living and all of that. And I was like, this is really, really cool. And we started looking at these kind of things at Friday Feels. So it was really great for me to see something, what you are building in Cape Town. And I kind of get what you're saying. The more I travel, the more I do miss Cape Town and South Africa. Tell us a little bit about, you know, when we spoke, you said that you obviously built your business during the last few years. And so we've had an interesting few years in the world. There's been lockdowns, there's been emergencies from lockdown. And we decided to title this topic for this week, Black Friday. Tell us a little bit more. I won't unpack it.
Well, Black Friday is a weird word in my company. Sometimes it's a swear word. Sometimes it's it's an exciting day. Sometimes it's a hard day. Depending on how you look at it, it's been many different kind of days over our time here in my company. We generally do double or triple our revenue over like that Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend, because a lot of our clientele are overseas and the Americans take Black Friday very seriously. But what that does is because Travel Tractions is a service business, we're a marketing agency and we sell time generally. When we do 3 times the sales in a month, that's still 3 months of work or 4 months of work, and then slightly discounted, it's maybe even more than that. It's like 4 or 5 months of work. So we do a hell of a lot of prepping, not just in the marketing materials, but the team, like up to 6 months of prepping for Black Friday. Even when we've done that, it's still such a hard time for my company. We've had so many people tired and have to work through it or not work through it. It is just like, and it's a tricky time for South Africans because like South Africa almost shuts down from the 15th of December till about the 10th of January to a certain degree. So, and I build lifestyle businesses, and how I like to see that is like businesses that you enjoy doing and that you like to do. So it's really tough for me. And we've been actually very nice about it in terms of like, I want people to spend time with their families in the December time. And I think that's so important, is to capitalize on those moments with family, because I could only do that when I was traveling during Christmas time almost, or during that, time I'm back. So yeah, every year we plan for Black Friday, and every year we get it a little bit more right, but we get it still very, very wrong. I think my managers get a bit stressed when we start talking about Black Fridays and what specials we're having. And by the time about April, May runs around, we are tired, we are depleted, and we need to just like get through the final part of our Black Friday orders and kind of get back on track. And then almost by that time we're in June, and we need to be prepping for the next Black Friday. So my business to a certain degree is revolved around Black Friday because we get so much new customers and we're working so hard and we're trying new things. So yeah, that's been my working through the exhaustion of Black Fridays and prepping for it. And it's just a big part of what's made us grow to a certain degree.
And what was Black Friday like after lockdown?
That was a crazy, crazy Black Friday. I think I was quite fortunate with Black Friday because I had a beautiful house. I mean, in lockdown time, because I had a beautiful house in Bloberg. I realized like I love remote work. I'd always imagined having a remote company, but I saw a 5-bedroom house in Bloberg and was like, okay, cool. Maybe I can get my team to live with me because previously I'd been in an entrepreneurship house and that was such a cool energy. It was like an amazing energy of all these entrepreneurs working really hard, working until like 2:00 in the morning, sharing coffee at like middle of the night. And I, in a way, wanted to recreate that. So I got this beautiful house in Bloberg and just started hiring people left, right, and center to kind of train them in this house because you just get so much better onboard training when you're like face to face and you can hear conversations happening next to you. So, and that I think was our second year of business. That's kind of when we were making it. You know, we were scaling from 5 people to about 18 people when when COVID hit. So it was a very interesting build up to COVID. And then COVID happened and Travel Attractions is a travel marketing company, and travel evaporated in 2 days or 3 days. I mean, I was going to fly to a conference in Italy, and I was watching the news and seeing how bad this was. And it was very bad in Italy when it first kind of started happening. The death rate was like extremely high there. Sure. Anyway, the conference got cancelled. I was like, okay, the conference got cancelled. And then like the next day it was like, oh shit, okay, these people are closing down, countries are closing down. And like within 3 days, everything had closed down. And you can just see like in all my clients' analytics, it just drops like 90% of like the demand for travel evaporated. And I convinced all these young people, at that stage was training a lot of interns, to join my company and join me on this journey of building a travel marketing company. But no one was doing any travel marketing. It was a very tricky period for me because I don't want to let people go. I just, built all these people and got them to kind of join me on my journey. I just got this massive house where I could train people. For me, quitting kind of was an option, but not really an option. So I struggled a lot during that time. I mean, I remember this so clearly. It's like I'd wake up from my dreams, which were nightmares, just nightmares of dreaming of like, where am I going to get money? And I would start my day almost throwing up. And then going to the office with these young people and being like, okay, today we're gonna build this website and build this website. And luckily, I had the thought of wanting to build all these like small companies during this time. At that time, I was kind of passionate about cannabis and CBD, and South Africa just legalized cannabis for recreational use at home. So I was like, okay, let's build some cannabis businesses and some CBD businesses. Was really nice because my team used to have to try a lot of CBD products. So I guess it kept them calm and kept them well slept. And we built other businesses during that time, but we didn't know. So like luckily I'd been a consultant for like the few years leading up to that. So I'd worked with businesses in Australia, in like the comparison engine business, in insurance. I'd seen affiliate businesses in Europe. I'd seen other guys in Southeast Asia who had like Amazon businesses. So I'd been exposed to all these awesome business models. And I did have money saved up. We had like 3 months of payroll in the bank, and that was okay amount. So I knew that we had 3 months to make a plan. After that, we were screwed. So we just built. And I think it was a lot of fun because young people, we're talking about like people just out of university, they became project managers and like managers of a website within 6 months or a year of them working with me. And they got to build teams, and we made it. Like we had a couple of freelancers that we kind of reduced their capacity a little bit, and I try to honor the permanent team a little bit more than the freelancers, but we didn't have to. I think we paused them for like, I don't want to lie, I think anything from 2 weeks to maybe 2 months, which wasn't a terrible pause for that time period. And a couple of months later, we were trying to hire Travel Start, which is the big African travel company in South Africa. We were like, okay, now we can kind of maybe build a better team and get people from other companies who were letting people go. So we were kind of like on the hiring within 3 or 6 months after this and building these businesses. And things seemed to be going okay. So we were kind of fortunate that maybe cannabis got legalized in South Africa, and I had already an interest. And we also had a whole lot of other businesses in the insurance space, in the outdoor adventure space too. So that became really big in America. People spending a lot more time outdoors. So yeah, it was an exciting time. But if you asked me if I'd go back to it, probably not, because of like the stress that I had. It was just an immense amount of stress. And I just had to work. I kind of like worked through it. I'd always been okay with coping with stress. And that period really, like, I had to find different mechanisms. I had to see a psychologist and tell him my side and kind of get that feedback from him. I started climbing and doing activities to try and break the mental fatigue that would happen in the afternoon, so I could go climbing and do exercise and then be refreshed to work in the evening again. So it was like one of the hardest periods in my life, but definitely the one where I grew the most. So it was tough, but it definitely helped me become who I am today, and I'm able to handle a lot more stress, because when I'm stressed, I'm like, remember that time that you couldn't even sleep and you were throwing up every day you used to get up? Like, it's not as bad as that, so you can get through this. So yeah, it was good.
I think it's a good point that you make, right? Is a lot of people, I mean, now it's coming to light more, but entrepreneurs are sharing more about just the sheer stress that happens when you just don't know, there's no roadmap, and everybody handles that differently. But it's very much so, I would say, something that sometimes you're so excited about the product and the company and your team that you don't really think about what it's doing to you, kind of like the toll it's taking on your body or the toll that it's taking on your mental capacity. So, I mean, you're also working at such an accelerated rate, right? And so it's obviously like you're not just going in, okay, when I get there, this is what I do. You're constantly thinking about, okay, how do I make this better? What should I be doing? So
I think if you're idle in those periods, when you're not thinking about work or the next thing, and you're kind of thinking in your current position, you can get stuck in that kind of position of like, oh, it's so bad. Yes, it is bad, but it's going to get better. So, like, a lot of my team, when they go through hardships, I think work-life balance is becoming more important now. Back then, maybe like 5 years ago, there was like this Gary V hustle culture, like, just work, do what you love and you won't get burnt out or whatever. But I am a little bit of a proponent of like, hey, I know things are kind of tough, but, maybe work on your own thing, or keep your mind busy, or read a book, or get kind of lost, but like do something, like just do, because if you're doing, you won't kind of be too sad. But it's kind of hard. It's really hard to do that, because I think a whole lot of people have different mechanisms where maybe they don't communicate that they are sad, or maybe they got nothing to do. So it is tricky, but I'm such a proponent for like, just do, just create, just try. I think it's such an amazing kind of thing. So I was forced to. I think if I didn't have all those employees, maybe if I had 5, I would have sat around and waited for COVID to finish. But I was just in a position where my back was against the wall, and I didn't want to step too much back. I wanted to just go. And in the end, it was okay. I mean, it was a good thing for me, at least. So
I've recently realized that it really is in these moments, like you say, where it's the hardest that you are growing the most. And I've come to realize you're very right. Sometimes you feel like you just can't do anything because there's so much that you want to do. But just doing the little things, like just doing what you can today, the things you can control, the things that you can tick off, and that kind of gets this momentum going, and this keeps this ball rolling, and that's really important.
yeah, I think it's the baby steps. It's one day at a time, 1 week at a time. I think a lot of people try and think like 6 months or a year or 2 years, and they just get like lost there. But literally, if you just do one thing and one foot in front of the other, they kind of get you there.
Yeah, I think that's awesome advice for a lot of the entrepreneurs. So tell us a little bit about Hustle House and the type of people, what type of people really enjoy Hustle House? Do you see a lot of people coming and staying for months on end? Is it mostly entrepreneurs? Are you seeing remote workers? Very curious. And what sort of amenities you guys have there?
Well, I looked for this house for so long. So if we speak about the kind of people, this is what resonated with me and why I started this business is really struggled to relate to normal people again, which was like people who maybe had corporate jobs or people who hadn't traveled. And that was kind of hard for me because I would go to a bride and so much people would be telling me how much they hate their jobs. And I'm like, oh, but you can just, do another job. And I think it's hard. It's way easier to say that than to actually do it. But when I stayed in a co-living in Palma, Mallorca, it's called Palma Co-living, I'd been traveling for 10 years and staying in hotels and Airbnbs and hostels, and none of those like really invigorated me to the extent that this co-living did, because it was like in backpackers you have like 20 and 30-year-olds, the kind of young people who are there on holiday, and it's kind of hard to work in those kind of places. And then hotels was very lonely, so you'd be in a hotel for maybe a week or in Airbnb in a week and a month, and it was also so lonely. So when I discovered this co-living in Spain, my mind just was like, whoa, there's this whole different way to kind of do it. So so I traveled for another year, trying these business models out and staying in these things. And I was like, okay, like South Africa is beautiful. I need to do this in South Africa. Like people need to see it. And a lot of the complaints people would say about coming to South Africa is it's quite a long journey. So it's like 16 hours or maybe 20 or 30 hours, depending on your flights, to get here. And a month stay, which is like the co-living general kind of stay, would be it. Yeah, it was a good format, and I found this house that has all of the bedrooms have ensuite bathrooms, which is the really important things to the ladies, I hear. So that helped a lot, that it was a nice guest house that had these ensuite facilities. And then we interview almost every guest. And you ask what qualities and what kind of, you mentioned some of the words that I recently did an interview just before this, and it's adventurous, curious, compassionate, community, and those kind of like really words that kind of resonate with me. And those are the kind of people that come through here, and it's so cool because they might be working corporate. And I can get to hear how corporate kind of works and how their systems and their processes are. And then I hear this scrappy entrepreneur who's pitching people to kind of invest in his startup. And I hear about people who are like 5-year entrepreneurs and the problems that they're going through. So you're just exposed to all these incredible conversations with very similar, like-minded kind of people. So we've tried to really also make the space a community space where the dining room, for example, has enough seating for 12 to 14 people in case you want to have everybody over for dinner to sit together, instead of like, I don't know, tables of 2 where you're kind of isolated. And the outside area has this kind of, same kind of thing, for 14 people. And we have a rooftop that's got a putt-putt thing in case you want to do meetings and be on a call and play putt-putt while you on a call. And we got this podcast room. So we kind of try to make it so that every need you might have is kind of taken care of, and we try and really look for people to stay in the house that have this community, adventurous, curiosity kind of mindset, and curate these spaces where connections can happen. I remember sitting with my girlfriend on the first month of this group, and we're probably like 1 week in, and they were sort of making jokes and asking people to go to dinner together. And we're like, okay, cool, we've made it. The community now is built. They're starting to make these plans. And that's the most exciting thing for me. So we kind of have these facilities to try and make those connections happen. And they're already meeting each other. They're sending pictures in the WhatsApp group of the meeting on opposite ends of the world. And I'm like, it's happening. So we try and build that kind of environment here.
It sounds like you have a very collaborative environment. And I will say that when I was traveling, doing some solo travel for work, I think, and then I would take a vacation afterwards. Early on in my career, I stayed at a hostel in Amsterdam, and I thought it was just such a cool environment. I mean, these people were doing like the coolest stuff, and they planned so many activities, and it was kind of like you could go downstairs at any given time or day and people are doing things, there's food there. And I was like, wow, this is really amazing. And even now when I think about it, like sometimes, I mean, now you can afford to go to nicer places, you can afford to go to like a hotel, and I'm like, but it's so lonely, like if I don't know anybody here, like I usually try to ask people like, oh, do you know anyone in this place, before I go. But sometimes I find myself it's kind of weird because you're just like, there's all these people around. I wonder if there's other people wondering the same thing, right? When you happen to find yourself on like solo travel, or your partner is not with you for that day or is coming like a few days later, it's always really interesting to kind of hear how people interact. So it's really nice that you created a community like that, because I know for a lot of people, like even now, they'll be like, oh, you're too old to kind of go to a house, or it's not safe or something. And there is like some concern there. So it's hard because the market isn't really providing like another opportunity to do so. So it seems like Hustle House is that opportunity.
Yeah, I think you're not alone in thinking that, that is a hostel the right kind of place. And I think when you get older, you have more financial ability to afford other places. But like, I encourage all my employees, I'm like, I don't care what age you are, like, if you've never stayed in a hostel, you need to stay in one. Like, there are these hostels that are made for work or made for play, and they all have like their certain vibes. But some of the best travel experiences that I had was definitely not staying in a Airbnb alone with my head down working. It's when I'm sitting in a hostel and these people are like, oh, we're going to go feed elephants and wash them at 2 o'clock. Do you want to come? And I'm like, yeah, let me like speed through this work and go and join them and kind of build these friends. So I think traveling, staying in a hostel is one of the best things you can do. Like, I still, I did have a bad experience in the last hostel I stayed in, because it was like I messed up really badly in Barcelona, and there was some festival going on, and I could either pay 400 euros for a room, or I could pay 56 euros for a 40-person dorm for a night. It was just these young kids in this dorm, and it was a bit different experience for me, but I still enjoyed it. I still have a story from it. I still met some interesting people and kind of went through that. So I love the hostel thing. I love that way to travel. So I'm like, if anybody asks me, like, a lot of South Africans are traveling for their first time in their 20s, very overseas. I'm like, please go stay in a hostel. And they normally say, oh, I'm an only child and I'm not used to doing that. I'm like, 3 days. That's all you got to do. Is just 3 days. Stick it off for 3 days. It might be hard the first day, but someone is going to ask you, what are you doing for dinner, or what are you doing for lunch? And you're going to make a friend. And I think travel is better shared.
I agree. I agree with that. And now, like, there's so many more reviews and things like that. I was going to say, I remember that night I had like a lock on my laptop. I slept with it under my pillowcase. I was just so scared because I didn't know what to do. I also booked it, I'm pretty sure, by accident. So I thought it was like my own room, but it was actually like a shared room, and it was only other guys.
Yeah.
And I was so scared to tell like my parents, because they were just like, oh, did you get in okay? Or is it good? And I'm like, yeah, but like, so I think I messaged like one of my coworkers. I was like, hey, just letting you know this is where I am. And what's going on in case anything happens.
I think it's definitely one of those kind of periods where you grow and you get to learn about yourself a little bit more. It's like, oh, I can handle that situation, or I did like that, or I didn't like that. So for me, it's a huge opportunity for growth, putting yourself in this like slightly uncomfortable position. Like, I'm actually extremely introverted. So sharing a room with 8 other people or 4 other people is like a bit hard for me. But it's just opened these incredible kind of doors. So it's the first thing I recommend to anybody, especially while they're young. But I don't think people should be thinking, oh, I'm 40 or I'm 50, I can't stay in a hostel. Like, it's no one judge. They don't like, oh, you. I was called the old guy actually in Albania, and I was like 26 at the time. So I mean, there's no old person there. You kind of make jokes, and everybody's kind of involved. There's no not time to visit a hostel. Honestly, that's what my belief is.
Absolutely. I can say I never really traveled much like that when I was in my 20s, and I'm traveling a lot now. And I stayed when I went back to South Africa before, I had to spend one night in Paris, and I stayed in a hostel there, and it was wonderful. And I ended up talking about locks, Saj. I ended up locking my handbag in the lockbox with the key for the lock in the handbag. So, like, talk about like failed experience, I mean, building experience rather. And it's so beautiful when you've traveled a lot and as you were saying, Matt, like, the more you do these things, the more you put yourself in these situations, the more you know that you can handle anything and it will all be fine. And out came the receptionist with her massive, key cutter, and then like, this is
Yeah.
the first time it's happened. So boom, boom, it was all done. I bought a new lock. But like, yeah, I think it's a wonderful experience. You learn so much about yourself. But I really think what you're building with Cape Co-Living and Hustle House, and the world's needing more of these co-living spaces. We're having a lot of conversations with co-working spaces that are partnering with, hotels and Airbnbs and all of that. But they also needing to build that community in a way. And so you have a beautiful blend of both, which I think is really special.
Yeah, I think people are looking for community. I mean, it's just nice to know people through Facebook or Instagram or whatever, but when you get to meet them in person, it's just slightly more deeper. And it's a growing space. Before this call, we were speaking how much it's growing and how this is like not just for digital nomads, it could be for like retirement people, it could be for students, it could be for kind of a lot of things. And even though I'm introverted, I see so much value in community, in like hearing ideas and putting yourself in these kind of situations where you wouldn't put yourself and you wouldn't hear about, and opening your eyes to different cultures, different people. So like, I'm such a huge proponent for travel. So I think like travel and entrepreneurship, but I've told everybody to travel because they put you in this situation. I imagine when you locked your lock and bag and your passport probably and everything, you had to be like, your problem solving skills must have been going left, right, and center. And luckily it was, solvable by asking the receptionist, but I'm sure you would have learned how to pick a lock or break a lock if that didn't work, So it's a really cool way to put yourself in a weird situation and have to like realize that you got to get through it to get to the next thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so talking about like next thing and putting through, I mean, you've kind of given us a little bit of a journey, but did you see yourself here 10 years ago? What you're doing now?
I always saw myself in entrepreneurship. I just knew that I struggle with, we discussed this the other day, but I struggle with authority a little bit. So I always knew that I would have to kind of be my own boss to a certain degree. But I never knew I'd have a co-living. But I had something like this, that I had a house in Bloberg. It was a 5-6 bedroom house. And COVID happened and I needed to fill a room. So I let another entrepreneur in the house, and he was going through a divorce and he was an entrepreneur, and I sympathized with the guy a bit, and he's like, I can't afford the deposit. So I was like, okay, well, you got lots of furniture, you can sign it over to me and we'll call that your deposit. And this guy was doing lots of drugs and alcohol in the house. And I was like, okay. And then he wasn't paying rent. So I had to start, selling off his furniture to cover the rent. And he was furious about this, which didn't make any sense because that was the only way to kind of do it. And my housemates explained this to him. But eventually what happened was it was a very negative experience in the end because everything imploded. His wife divorced him. He got fired from the new job. I was selling his furniture. He couldn't afford rent. He was not getting his life on track. And everybody was outside the house. And I'd locked all his furniture in a room. And it was like, no, you're not getting your furniture back. You owe me this and you can move out whenever you need to. But I can't not, take something for the rent that you haven't paid. Anyway, I moved out the house, or I took my dog and I went to go sleep with my brother because I just didn't feel that comfortable. And he had actually assaulted me that night. In the process, we had called the police and we had called security, and it was a big hoo-ha. But there was like 70,000 Rand in damage, so about $3,000 or $4,000. The next day, and my house was flooded. He turned on the taps, and he was just a malicious person. But I went to court, and I had to like go through this whole process. I swore, I was like, I'll never ever have a 5-bedroom house or have like this kind of arrangement again. So if you ask me like 3 years ago or 4 years ago, never, ever, ever, ever would I say I would be in this position. But the co-living in Spain was for me such a beautiful thing. Like, you hear how passionate I am about people staying in hostels. Imagine how passionate I am about the co-livings, because this is the real business that I'm really passionate about. So Yeah, I definitely saw myself having a business. This one, probably not. The online businesses, 100%. Like, I love digital marketing. I'm not a big fan of sales. I love the fact that you can put up a website, sell some stuff, wake up in the morning and someone's bought something in your sleep. Like, I don't know, it sounded, you would hear people speak about that and it's like, it's lies. What are they talking about? And I fell in love with that feeling. So I always knew I'd have an online business. I always knew I would maybe have employees. I really enjoy having a team. I enjoy leading a team. So yeah, online business, 100%. Co-living, no. And now I hope, I'm in love with this kind of business. So I'm really enjoying it. And people are asking me, am I going to scale it? Probably not, because I think it's quite a big on Darwin. I think it's hard to scale a personable, community-based business. And this business was born out of my, very similar position to you, actually, is when you go to Cape Town, you want a place to stay, and I would look at places in Cape Town to stay, and the rent was like $3,000 and $4,000 for an okay apartment in a nice area. And I was like, I don't know, I can't justify that, being a South African, knowing what they pay for rent and stuff like that. So this business was kind of born out of my selfishness of trying to find a place for myself in December, but also wanting to share this beauty of South Africa. And so much cool things have happened in that development where I really like the business, that I want to continue it and kind of see it through and kind of see what models I can put on top of this business. Like, now I'm renting the building I'm in, but I think the real value is being able to buy the building, live in the building, and then see that asset appreciation and then maybe sell it in the future. So I think if I went in any direction, I'd probably be trying to acquire a property and buy it, and then moving in that kind of cool direction.
House hacking.
House hacking, yeah, that's what you into. So like that's what I would really love to kind of do. But I think that comes with like a whole lot of different challenges, like dealing with contractors, dealing with good plumbers, dealing with good electricians, dealing with laws, dealing with bad tenants, like these things that, it's always daunting starting a new business, especially like a very different business. And I'm nowhere near close to being good at this one. I need to like do this one for another year. Like, I cannot tell you the problems that we faced in the last week in this house because of what's going on with the storms in Cape Town. I was in a wedding in George when I was raised, and the roof tropen collapsed and fell off, and it was keeping the people up. The wind was rattling the windows. There were sparks outside because one of the electricity wires, people had packed their bags because they were worried that one of the sparks would maybe catch fire to something. So it's a challenging business, this, actually, and to get this house ready, because it was a digs, it was a student house before, so get from a student house to like I think fit for digital nomads, we used to Airbnbs and hotels. It was a big kind of adjustment, but so much fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are the things that people sometimes you don't hear about it. And it's good in a way. Like, if you don't have to experience it, it's good, but it's always kind of plan for the worst, expect the best. You're really lucky when you do get good tenants. But I remember there's this woman on Instagram, and I used to follow her because she had a lot of advice on Airbnbs. That was their whole, there's some people that's their whole business, is actually just Airbnb hacking. So they actually get things under contract by sellers who just don't want to deal with the business. They have an extra property, and rather than doing it to long-term tenants, they'll get it under contract, and then they'll basically just handle the Airbnb bookings. So it's not even their property. And they'll just do that in mass. And it's fine when it works well, but when it doesn't work well is where, then one person like doesn't really have it, or like, causes issues, etc. And like going through that process. And the laws is such a big part of that. And there was a woman who, I think it was her own house that she lived in. She rented out a room in it. And this lady decided to book for, I think it was 2 months or something. And she paid initially, but then she stopped paying. Or it was 6 months, and she paid initially and then she stopped paying. And it turned out, like, in that state, because the laws are state specific, she actually had to go to court with this woman to actually physically remove her. And the lady was so brazen. She would like come out during the day and like eat food and like go back in the room. And it was just like, it was so funny because this lady, she videotaped her. She's like, this woman has been staying in my house. This is what they don't share about like on Airbnb, you know, and this was her business, you know, like she did this. And so in her own house, and she was telling people like, hey, you shouldn't rent out for over a month and a day, because then they can be considered a certain type of tenant, and then you have to prove that, like, you know, that's the thing in the US, which is big, is anybody could say anything, right? But like you have to wait for your court date for you to like uncover the evidence. They can push it, they can do all this thing. So all that time that you're waiting, it's money that you're losing. It could be investors' money. It could be your money. It could be, you know, so those are the things that make me a little wary about it. But obviously, you know, there's ways to mitigate. So I remember when we had the Airbnb in North Carolina, and we had just redone the whole house, and everything was new. And the first person that booked on Airbnb, it's like almost like they threw a party there. And we were like, oh my God, there goes all of our everything. Like, what is going to happen? And we were so scared. Like, I couldn't sleep that night. And I was like, this is a bad idea. And like, I mean, in a good way, we tried again to like mitigate as much as we could. Like, it wasn't a super expensive house. So we're like, okay, well, like, how much could the damages be? You know, we have an intermediary, like they had Airbnb. And it turned out actually when the cleaners went, they didn't have any issues. They were like, the place is spick and span. It doesn't smell. There's nothing there. And we were just like, are you sure? Like, because we could see the cameras from the outside. You can't put cameras on the inside, but you could just see people coming in and out. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, but it's like these things that you never think of, you know?
No, I think as an entrepreneur, you really have to like you kind of prepare for the worst, or you have to prepare for the worst, and hopefully things kind of work out for you. And I think things are going to go wrong, you know. So the fact that, you know, the first night gave you all the stress and you kind of just had to go through it, and the second time was a bit better. But I imagine you would spend that night looking on Amazon for like noise detection things and thinking about how you can update your T's and C's to kind of avoid this. So I think like I definitely would have been as confident to start this business if I didn't go through the labor law, not the labor laws, the laws of South Africa to like get this other guy, because in the end, you know, I got a warrant of arrest for him, which is, you know, quite an extreme kind of way, but that's the lawyers were kind of going for that. In the end, I didn't invoke that, but I'd been through the process. Like, I was so scared to go to court, and I was so scared to get lawyers, and I was just so scared in this whole process. But now I've been through that, I'm like, if someone tries to squat with me, I'll be like, come at me. Like, I got the lawyer, I got the, you know, the courts. I know what I'm going through. Have you done this before? Because if you have, I mean, that's not gonna be a good thing for you. So I think like business is just one of those things where, yeah, you kind of have to go through the bad times to know what's ahead of you. There's no way like someone can tell you, yeah, you're gonna have a squatter, or you're gonna go through this, or, but I think it's really nice that entrepreneurs are showing that side now, because there used to be this like Instagram glam kind of like, yeah, I'm only working 10 minutes a day on my business. And I'm like, cool. I wonder how long that business is going to stay alive if you're only working 10 minutes a day. So I think it's a really big part of entrepreneurship is to like grin and bear it, get up, face the things, prepare, and kind of go through that. And I imagine for your business it must be quite tricky because there's different laws in every state, you know. So like it's tricky. You almost, you know, you've got to find a repeatable process. But when you're expanding, it's hard to really have repeatable processes.
Yeah. It is. It's very state specific. We have different strategies for different states when we're looking at it or evaluating. And also the people are different in different states too. Like North Carolina was like the easiest thing ever. I mean, that it wasn't the easiest, but the people made it easier. Like just dealing with the people, their personalities, it's slower. You can ask them, people are willing to share. You know, in New York, it's very different. And now in Miami, it's even more different for us. And so it's each like region and state also have their own kind of vibe. And we were lucky enough to be able to do business or try and talk to people in different industries and states, because it's very much like our own like boots on the ground market research. I mean, there's things you can read online, but it's very different when you're actually there physically. And that sense of community is different in different states.
Yeah, I think you got to have a good community or a good support system, or just you got to be a little bit plugged in. You have to. In the end of the day, you cannot go alone. Like there's no one who has made a successful business by just going alone and not listening to anybody. You kind of have to build that community, and I think that's such an important part of business. And everything is to kind of expand your net or your horizons and kind of speak to people, because they'll give you the proper advice. They're on the ground, Instagram can teach you so much, but it's not going to like tell you the nitty gritty conversations and even the blog posts that you kind of read. So I'm a big proponent for being like, sometimes it's really hard to build a community. I think it's one of the hardest things to do is to put yourself out there and be like, I want to do this. Does this sound crazy or stupid or silly? And then getting feedback from someone, and then someone be like, oh, I've done that. You should do this. And they'll probably like shave a day minimum or months, if not years, of your learning if you're able to have that community and have that feedback bounce back to you. So I'm a huge proponent for kind of doing that.
I think that kind of brings us to one of the questions that we always ask people. What is the best professional advice that you've gotten?
It's so hard. I think just the ability to get up, like to continue, like you're gonna go through to, like, I try and have a culture of feedback. So my parents are always kind of telling me what I can do better. And it's quite tough. So the thing that I've taken away the most from my parents, maybe not something that was said to me, was just to continue. Like, I know things are tough and you've been hurt or whatever it might be, but you kind of just have to continue. And a huge thing that my parents instilled in me is manners maketh a man. So like if you have a community and you've kind of let people down, or you've broken promises or not lived up to what you kind of have said, then it's going to come back and kick you in the butt at some point or another. So like, I think the really important thing is in business is persevering in, I wouldn't say one direction, but just like persevering in that direction and building your expertise, your resilience and your stress and your experience and just everything in a direction. And then treating everybody you can with as much manners and honor as you can, because I work in marketing and I work in online marketing, which is SEO. Word of mouth is the best channel for anything. People speak highly of you if you treat them nicely and treat them respectful. So I think that's sometimes the sad thing in business that's not always kind of followed through, is just to be honorable. But I think if you are honorable, people will remember. And if people kind of take that into the workforce or take that into their agreements or just take that forward with perseverance, it will be a setup for success at some point or another. It's going to all come back to you. So I think that's the biggest professional advice I've taken from kind of people around me, I guess.
Yeah, and I can totally resonate with what you're saying in terms of South African families have that thing. We push quite hard, but it's so rewarding down the line. We have high standards and we have honorable communities. So I think that's really good advice as well.
Your parents just want the best for you at the end of the day. And in the end, I think South Africans have good reputations for our work ethic and the way that we go out there. So I think it is a very South African thing, is to be like, go out there and make the most of it, and we don't shy away from feedback. Someone will say, okay, you didn't do such a good job, and it's like, okay, I'll do a better job, or I'll get it fixed, or whatever it might be. But we kind of have that thing where we're quite honest with each other, but we're still friendly in that kind of thing. But I think South Africans are really great work people, and people are waking up to that. It's so incredible to see all these European and American companies hiring South Africans because of our work ethic and our education levels and all of these things. So it's been really cool to kind of see South Africans really utilized and appreciated in these, other kind of countries. And I think it's because of how we were brought up here to a certain degree.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true, and then it can sometimes be hard when you're in it when you're growing up. So, but it's worth it in the end. So for any young South African listening,
Character building. My parents would call it character building. I used to hate the word character building. But now I'm like in my 30s, so I'm like, cool, thank you so much character building, because it's like I wouldn't be here if you didn't, if you made it easy.
but it's a great segue into our section of the week. That's talking about our gems of the week and what makes you a good working professional, what fills your cup. And yeah, you've obviously had a really rough time coming back from after the storms and everything. But do you have something that you feel has been like a gem of the week?
I think gem of the week, probably just surround yourself with good people. I have a fantastic girlfriend who's actually helping me with all these technical difficulties that we've had. She's a little bit sick right now, and we've had to deal with a washing machine and things broken, and she kind of handles the kind of calls that we have, and also the people that we have in the house are really fantastic. They've had to problem solve a lot of the problems that were going on while Cape Town was kind of imploding. So my gem of the week is just, to not undervalue people and the people around you, because they have the ability to make everything so much easier and nicer if you just kind of treat them nicely, even if things are tough. Everything's kind of going through their own thing. But in the end of the day, people want to help people. Like, people are not bad, maybe just going through stuff themselves. But yeah, my gem of the week would be to hopefully think the best of people, and it will come back to you. Surround yourself with those people.
That's awesome. Thanks, Matt. How about you, Saj?
Yeah, I think Matt, you said something that really resonated with me this week, which was that the problems are always going to be there. They're kind of expected. So if you build them into the plan, then it doesn't seem so. I mean, when you're going through it, it's like, oh my goodness, how did I not think of this? But it was always going to be something, right? That you didn't think of, or that could have happened, or was just random. And I think sometimes, as people who are always pushing the boundaries, it can be a lot of pressure. So it's always good to kind of remember that. And the other one I will say is, after talking, so many of the people that we have on here, especially the entrepreneurs, you guys say the same things over and over. And it's so crazy how it resonates across different industries, different, you know, types of companies, different geographies as well, which is just like keep pushing, constantly trying things, excited to build, finding your community, XYZ. So it's always good to kind of hear those reminders, because no matter what business you're in, those are kind of core pillars that you kind of have to build upon. So thank you for sharing that. I would say those would be my two gems of the week. What about you, Nicole?
Yeah, I guess mine ties those together a little bit, and it's really about navigating the unexpected plan with grace. And it's the lady I'm staying with and the dogs I'm looking after, so she had to travel for work. She's got an incredible job doing broadcasting for events around the world. And anyway, I had to go drop her off in Marseille, which is about 2.5 hours drive from here. And just for context, the car is a UK car, so the same as in South Africa, the right-hand drive. But in France, they drive on the right-hand side of the road as well. So it gets a little tricky, but I've gotten used to that. I got over that fear being here. So as we dropped her off, and we have all 5 dogs in the car, it's chaos, because it's her babies, they're saying goodbye. And I realized my data package has run out. These are the things that happens when you travel and you like buy month to month or week to week or whatever. And so I just didn't have any Google Maps that I got so used to over the years to navigate me. And I've never been to Marseille and by myself, and I've never driven these roads that I was on. So anyway, somehow managed to navigate myself with no Google Maps and just half of the map that was trying to kind of connect and show me where I am. Got a little lost in Marseille City, took a few wrong turns, and about 3 hours later, we got back to our destination. And dogs were all quiet in the car. And I was like absolutely like drenched in sweat from stress. But it was kind of cool to just wangle it old school again. And I forgot how much we used to use maps, actual maps. So it was cool to navigate. And just to know that again, doesn't matter what happens, you will always be okay. I was watching the petrol like kind of go down very close to zero, so that was not helping the problem. But anyway,
And it wasn't like a hey, navigate to closest petrol or gas station, So
exactly.
probably a very stressful time.
Yeah, yeah, but it's all good, all good. It's part of the experience. So yeah, so that was my
It
jam,
is.
is just self trust, I guess, and a lot of angels. So thank you to the universe for that. And so I guess that brings us to our final thoughts. But before we do that, where can people find you, Matt? How can they connect with you?
I'm a little bit on Instagram. I haven't posted in a while, but I love to keep track of where people are in the world in case they're in the same place as I am. So I love Instagram for that and kind of seeing people travel. It's one of my passions. But I think travel attractions is my main business, or actually OG Ventures is my main business, where we kind of invest in small businesses and entrepreneurs who are kind of figuring out and need kind of helping hand, especially in the marketing department. So OG Ventures, travel attractions, and then of course Cape Co-Living. So if any of your listeners are around Cape Town and are staying here for more than a week, we would love to host them. So we're happy to give them 10% off if they just mention Friday Feels in the form when they're applying. And they'll have a little chat with me and hopefully get to see the house. So those are where you kind of find me around the internet and the real world.
Thank you. And I hope I get to stay there next time I'm in Cape Town. We'll have to make a plan.
I hope so too. You have to come visit. I think that you'll love it. It'll be nice to speak to you more about business and life and your travels and just everything. So I really hope that the next time you are in Cape Town that you can come stay or work here or any capacity. It'll be really awesome.
Oh, amazing. Thanks, Matt. And thank you for joining us today. It was really, really cool chatting to you, and always fun to hear another South African accent far away.
Yeah.
I try and move away from it, but I'm glad I still have a tinge of it. So, and Sergio, it was such a pleasure to hear about your businesses. Really, really, really cool. Hopefully, I get into flipping
Yes.
at some point. That is one of the big goals. So it's really cool to hear more about that. And I'm looking forward to listening to more of the podcasts. I need to get in there. I'm not a big listener of podcasts in general because I'm always in meetings and I struggle to find that space. But I really enjoy your guys' topics, so I'm excited to kind of listen to it a little bit more.
Thank you so much. And thank you for for sharing your story and your businesses. And yeah, I'm sure we're going to do some cool stuff together at some point.
Thanks, Sash. It's been a pleasure being here.
And so, for our audience out there, if you're listening, are you feeling those Black Friday feels where the credit card is maxing out and your energy is burning up and you're just exhausted? Well, we want to know, how are you tackling these moments? What does enduring through exhaustion mean to you? And how are you navigating being human in the world?
And we'd love to hear from you. Remember to tag us using hashtag These Friday Feels to share your stories and listen to us on all your favorite platforms. And to work with us, have us broadcast Friday Feels from your space and organize your next workation. Reach out to us at hello@friday-feels.co.
Next week, it's the month of May. No, we are not April fooling you. We are already in the month that marks the twists and turns of the seasonal tides. And so we're dipping our toes into a new theme, and we're calling it the tipping point. That moment you knew things had to change and you were going to be part of making it happen. So we're going to explore the journey leading up to and after major shifts in some of the very cool working human lives. Stay tuned. But until next time, that is our mix. We had so much fun mingling with you, and we wish you safe travels. Into your bed, into the night, and into this awesome weekend. See you next week, and keep it real.